What do you think we learned from the Putin-Tucker interview, speaking of Russia?
Well, Putin's a douchebag. I think I took that away, but I'd say I had a preconceived notion of Putin.
Those were your priors.
Yeah, that was something I walked into the interview with. Look, I don't know. I think I understand why Tucker wanted to do it, aside from just 160 million views or however many he got, right? I mean, that was sure to be a winner in just the ratings. I don't think it revealed anything clever or new about Putin's mindset. He's a smart cat, right? So he knew what he was going to say, how he was going to act, what he was going to look like. You know, he's a very calculating individual, right? He survived Russian politics, right, for this long at the top, right? You don't do that by being a moron, right? Or stumbling into an interview with Tucker Carlson, right? Who's not exactly Lex Luthor, right? I mean, so that, you know, again, that's not belittling to Tucker. He's a smart guy. I'm just saying that it's not like it was not like some Marvel, you know, movie where the two evil minds got together. Putin's a very calculating, clever individual. So I don't think I mean, from my perspective, I didn't learn anything new about him. Yep. Look, this idea that somehow we have no interest in Ukraine and we should just, you know, close the curtains on it. Yay, Ukraine, great courage for 2 years. We all loved it. You know, I'll keep my bumper sticker on the car for Ukraine. And now we walk away because we don't care anymore, because we're tired of it and we want to, you know, do something, and we spend that money back. Of course, we should spend the fucking money at home, right? We got a lot of infrastructure problems and resources we should do, but we also have concerns over there. And so I think, you know, I'm amazed at the speed with which it happened, but you could argue that about a lot of things. You know,
the speed at which the support fell off?
Yes, the speed at which I mean, look, again, I don't mean to jump all over the place, but Hamas rolls into southern Israel, slaughters 1,200 people in probably the most medieval display of brutality that we've seen in our lifetimes, right? Which everybody agreed was incredibly brutal. And in record time, it's Israel's fault, right? Because they've gone into Gaza to try to destroy the Hamas, which has been doing this, which has always been in existence to destroy Israel. And so, yeah, and of course, you don't want civilians to die. But Hamas has spent, you know, going on a couple decades now, embedding themselves inside that population, knowing that every time that there is a conflict, civilians are going to die, knowing that that's going to drive the narrative. That's what they do. So the speed with which that happened, the speed with which we've gotten fatigued in Ukraine, you know, it all kind of comes back around again to this whole idea.
Novelty, desire for something new. Yeah, I knew that the Putin-Tucker interview was going to be a big deal, and I'd sort of prepared myself for, this like cataclysmic meeting of, you know, like West and Soviet, and then I don't know, I came away from it kind of just being like, just very, very unenlightened, kind of unimpressed. I think, you know, you have this 30-minute treatise, monologue, soliloquy at the start about this is the history and this is why we feel this way and so on and so forth. And, you know, Tucker's he's a very competent interviewer.
Oh, yeah.
Usually. And I don't know how difficult it must have been, and this is something that people are never really going to see, the intermediary of a translator between the two adds a degree of complexity that can really, it's like fighting a southpaw or something. You know, it sort of throws you off your step a little bit.
Right.
And that sounds silly, but, you know.
No. They use that to, I mean, that's always been the case. You always use the translator to your advantage, right?
It gives him more chance to say something back, to do whatever. Right, yeah, very interesting. But no, it was a bit, and now Navalny's dead.
Yeah.
And that's the next, and that happens, what, a week, maybe? 10 days after he sits down with Tucker.
Yeah, no, and he doesn't care, right? I mean, we imagine that Russia cares what we think about them, how they're portrayed, and we imagine that Xi worries about how China.
You mean like they've got a brand equity dashboard somewhere? Yeah,
exactly.
And they're like, "What's our current rating? Oh, we're at 4.4 stars on TripAdvisor."
Yeah, or what is that? The old Q rating or the Q factor or something? You know, how popular are we? They really don't care. In part, not so much Russia, but more China, because they've got the longer view, right? They look way down the road compared to how the West tends to do it. But I think the parameters of what they were allowed to do, Carlson and his crew, when they went in, were pretty hard and fast, right? As you can imagine, there's a lot of back and forth that goes into that.
2 hours late as well for it.
Yeah.
Putin was 2 hours late, which apparently is like par for the course with him.
He was riding a tiger. He was doing something. He was
fighting a bear.
Fighting a bear.
Yeah.
So a couple of them. But yeah, if Carlson had like bored in on Gershkovich, right? Evan Gershkovich, who's sitting in jail, or Paul Whelan, or and in a more aggressive fashion. Said, okay, well, where's your evidence with Evan that he's been engaged in espionage? How about that? When are you actually going to do something about an actual, open, transparent effort to discuss his case? If he had gone in on that more, but that wouldn't have been allowed to happen, right? That wasn't part of the agreed upon, playing field. So I didn't think we were going to get anything new, and I didn't feel like we did. I understand why he did it, had the interview, but anyway. But the Navalny situation, sudden death syndrome.
Dude, you're in a forced labor camp. Like, just
above the Arctic Circle.
Being alive, being alive is a surprise.
Yeah.
Like, the death isn't the surprise thing. It's like, God, he lasted 2.5 years.
Yeah, he went for a walk, and then he didn't feel well. That was their original comment. He went for a walk, and then he didn't feel well, because that's what you do above the Arctic Circle.
Go for a walk.
Go for a walk, and then. There was some comment that he had bruising around his head and his chest, and their response was, "Well, he hit his head when he fell
on his chest
repeatedly, and then the chest was when they were trying to revive him." So, from a Russian perspective, it was exactly what you would expect, and whether he was poisoned or whether they used blunt force trauma or whatever, the outcome was probably always inevitable with Navalny, because he was always a threat. And
give the 30,000-foot view for the people who don't know his background, Navalny? Who was he?
He's, I'm trying to remember the year that he kind of really first surfaced. And I'm drawing a blank, but he not most recently, but he became sort of a critic of Chechnya. He became a critic of some of the governance in Chechnya and the corruption. He started being more vocal primarily about corruption issues, right? And then he fed off of that. I'm really oversimplifying it, but he had to be careful about how he was doing that, obviously, because you get sideways with the Russian regime pretty quickly. But he started to gain a following because he was one of the few people who was actually getting out and talking about things that people, I suppose in the back of their minds, they were thinking, yeah, there's probably some corruption going on here in the Russian government and around the region. And eventually he went to run for mayor, and that didn't end well, right? He got convicted or charged with business corruption. And that was kind of the first salvo that Putin fired at him, I think, in an effort to say, hey, look, just shut up, because I think, you're going to find this is not going to go well for you. So it was business corruption. You see that in China, too. Anytime somebody gets sideways with Xi, usually it's a corruption charge. It's some type of malfeasance on the business side. Yeah. So, and then they disappear. So Navalny made a bid for mayor of Moscow, feeling like that's where you could make a change, right? I think his real mindset was if he could get that post, then he really could perhaps longer term influence change in Russia. I mean, he's a proponent of democracy. Then disinformation started getting. There was a lot of movement from the Putin regime, painting him in a lot of different ways, right? Saying, okay, you're far right, you're an extremist, all sorts of things started to come through, and then it kind of all went sideways. He eventually ended up, I think it was 2020. He was on a flight, got sick. Novichok was the nerve agent that they used.
Which is serious shit.
Serious shit, invented by the Soviets. And So he almost died from that. He was out of the country. And then to his credit, after he recovered, okay, I'm going to come back.
Straight back.
Yeah. So he flew back. He got arrested before he even really got anywhere near, passport control. They just picked him up. And that was pretty much it.
But during this period, he had started to do YouTube. And he was flying drones, not him, his team were flying drones over the top of Putin's billion-dollar compound and releasing stories that he's just got like an army of hookers and pole dancers and stuff just cycling their way through this place and look at all of the money and this is where it's been spent. But they're, full on, like, in order to be able to go as far as they did, it looks like pretty high-grade technology to be able to capture this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, drones being what they are nowadays.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
That's real character. I know. So the drone technology has changed everything, right? And it's so accessible, right? You don't need much. A few $100 will get you a drone with a camera that you can, get some really good footage of. So, but you're right. Talking about his lavish lifestyle and his spending, that irked Putin on a personal level. Right. And Putin only cares about one thing, right, which is maintaining power. Same with Xi. And you maintain power by keeping the people under control. Right. So social unrest is the one thing that these guys all fear the most. Right. Including the mullahs in Iran and Kim Jong-un, although he lives in kind of a fantasy world out in North Korea. But so Navalny, at a certain point, for him, it was inevitable. I think that this is where it was going.
I mean, I remember watching it unfold at the time after this guy's been popped with nerve agent and then slowly recovers and then starts doing his YouTube stuff again. And this is getting, in days, tens of millions of plays. And it's not even, it's only in Russian, right? You can maybe translate it into British subtitles or English subtitles or whatever. And then he's like, I'm not scared of you. Like, you should be.
Yeah.
You should be scared.
Yeah.
But, and as soon as he got on that plane, right, to go back to the motherland, that was at some point within the next 5 years, you're probably going to be dead.
Yeah. And I think that I could see the calculation that he and his wife, I'm sure, and probably his close cadre made, that the most impact he can have will be in country, right? I mean, it's one thing to be a dissident outside the country. China's got a number of those, even though the Xi regime tries to track them down and change their minds. But I think Navalny probably spent a fair amount of time. Who knows? But it's speculation. But I suspect he spent a lot of time on that calculation. Can I have more impact outside the country or inside the country? And to his credit, he flew back knowing, I think, exactly what was going to happen.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Element. Stop having coffee first thing in the morning. Your adenosine system that caffeine acts on isn't working for the first 90 minutes of the day. So your morning coffee that you have upon waking is completely pointless, but salt acts on your adrenal system, and that is what is active. So taking Element first thing in the morning will help you to feel more awake, have less caffeine throughout the day, and be more energized. It'll help to regulate your appetite, curb cravings, and improve your brain function. It's a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it tastes fantastic. This orange salt in water first thing in the morning is gorgeous. It is my favorite way to start the day. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. And I was using this product long before they were a partner on the show. Best of all, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy, so you can buy it 100% risk-free, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Mike, you will love the full-length 2.5 hour long podcast, which is available right here. Go on. There it is.